LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the July 29th edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me. I'll be using the 14 best, most newsworthy clips I picked out from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, except for NBC's Meet the Press, still off for sports, the Olympics. It was Sunday, there was no Meet the Press, but I will take a bunch of clips from the other sources and add my media criticism and political commentary for what should be a really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political commentary fair use show for you all today. I think I said something there twice, but you get the idea. I had some glitches starting up the show, so I'm a little out of sorts, but I hope you appreciate my main topic here for the week. Bad week for Republicans as Kamala Harris unites Democratic Party. And after many bad weeks for Democrats, Biden was not doing well and the momentum was all against the Democrats. They finally had a good week. Both in terms of Kamala Harris getting energy and money and endorsements and pulling together the whole Democratic Party around her nomination, and then some bad quotes and bad coverage for Trump and his new vice presidential nominee, JD Vance. Both said some kind of weird things that I'll be talking about, and you'll see some Republicans having to respond to those. But speaking of saying something that is controversial, there was this weird thing that happened on Fox and Friends where the brown-haired guy who's not Steve Doocy last Wednesday, his actual name is Brian Kilmeade, he was criticizing Vice President Kamala Harris for not attending the speech by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to a joint session of Congress, and instead, Kamala Harris went and met with a sorority, a black sorority. Uh, is it a black sorority that Brian Kilmeade is referring to here? Did he say college sorority or did he say colored sorority? And that was kind of a controversy on the internet that will lead to my second clip, which is kind of comedic, that I'll talk about with you a little more after you can listen to it yourself. I actually think he might have said college, but I'll leave it up to you to decide after we listen to it together over here.
Obviously, you compare him to President Biden, who is muddling his way through speeches. People know he couldn't go more than
better, right?
Yep, couldn't go more than 15 minutes. She's very good on the prompter. No one even doubted that. She had 3,000 people there. Why are they there? A lot of them has to do with, hey, I'm a Democrat. I thought we were going to go down in flames. Now we have a shot. The problem with Kamala Harris, number one, she has not had her record exploited heavily because people thought and marginalized her. Even in the Democratic Party, they said, wow, what a bad choice Joe Biden made. Number two is she hasn't sat down for an interview. When she sits down in an interview and says, do you want to fund ICE? Where do you stand on Medicare for all? Why didn't you show up? The most recent decision, already you got a question. She will not show up for the Prime Minister's joint session of Congress today. She'd rather address in the summer a sorority, a college sorority, like she can't get out of that.
So what do you think? Did he say college sorority? It happened again. My camera is freezing. Why is my camera freezing like this? This is what happened before. You can hear me, I think, but you can't really see me talking. I don't know why this has happened. I'm doing everything the same. Maybe I have to update. I don't know. Uh, do you want to, should I do the whole show where all you can see is this frozen clip of me? Um, that is, I don't know how to fix this. Did that help? No? Maybe if I go over to the blank. I don't know why this is happening. I don't know if I should start the show over or this is, I'm like doing it the exact same way I've been doing it for a long time, and for some reason it just stopped working. I mean, I suppose I could try to switch over to, I could switch over to, now you can hear me. Hello, hello. Let's see. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I guess I can do it with like this. This is the built-in camera for, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there. That's really weird. So I guess I will do it this way. I don't know why that happened. Maybe I can get it fixed by next week. But I will keep going on with the program. I guess using the built-in camera instead of my external camera. And you heard Brian Kilmeade there either say college sorority or colored sorority. And then for the political comedy part of this, I'm sorry about that big break there, but for the political comedy part here, they kind of made fun of that, I think, on the handoff between MSNBC's The Weeknd and Velshi over in this clip.
Forget about tomorrow. You had Jamie Pritzker on today. You had Tish James. You had Eddie Glott. That show was Brat.
Wait, he said that show was black.
No, he said Brat.
Oh, Brat. Well, it was Brat and black. I heard black. I was like, Allie.
This is why.
But we just weren't gonna say nothing.
Okay. The math on that one ain't mathing, but I hear that I should just enunciate a little bit.
Brat is very lit. It's good. It's good.
Yeah. The way I delivered that, Michael, you would agree was cringe.
It was, dude, I'm just drinking. That's all I'm doing.
Have a great show, Allie.
Velshi starts now.
So yeah, that's my political comedy. And I don't know why that keeps beeping either. There's like weird things going on with my laptop today. I apologize for that. But anyway, that's my political comedy clip. And I think the weird colored college sorority clip before it was what was the basis for that whole thing. Because Michael Steele had actually made some comment about it on the weekend earlier. And so anyway, that's what I'm starting the show with. And now I'm going to get to the news summaries from longest to shortest. And I will start with the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary. They talk briefly about the attack on northern Israel from Lebanon that you'll see is covered more extensively by Fox News and CBS. But they mostly cover the 100 days till the election story, both the Republican and Democrat side, which I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. We are keeping a close eye on the Middle East this morning after Israel responded overnight to the deadliest attack on an Israeli-controlled area since October 7th. 12 children were killed by a rocket launch from Lebanon that hit a soccer field in the Golan Heights. Benjamin Netanyahu cut his trip to the U.S. short and is now back in Israel. But we begin with this wild U.S. presidential election. We are officially 100 days to Election Day, and you can be forgiven for needing to catch your breath after the transformational events of the past 31 days. It was just 1 month ago that the 2024 race was turned on its head by President Biden's catastrophic debate performance, leading to a drumbeat of calls for him to leave the race. Just 2 weeks ago, an attempted assassin tried to take the life of former President Trump, but he rose up with defiance heading into the GOP convention convention with seemingly all the momentum behind him and the new Trump-Vance ticket. And it was just 1 week ago that President Biden did what he said only the Lord Almighty could make him do, announcing he was leaving the race and giving his full support to his vice president, Kamala Harris. A tidal wave of endorsements followed, putting Harris on track to be the second woman in history to be a major party nominee, just 8 years after Hillary Clinton was defeated by Donald Trump. This morning, our brand new ABC News Ipsos poll shows Harris getting a real bounce. Her favorability rating among all Americans up 8 points in just 1 week. The number's even better among independents, with her favorability rising from 28% to 44% since Biden left the race. And there appears to be new enthusiasm for Harris, with 48% enthusiastic about her as the Democratic nominee, compared to 39% enthusiastic about Trump as the GOP nominee. It has been a stunning turn of events in a presidential race that has defied expectations. To help us make sense of this wild week, let's turn to ABC senior national correspondent Terry Moran. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Martha. It's hard to believe that it's been just a week since President Biden ended his bid for re-election and transformed this campaign. And now with Vice President Kamala Harris having basically locked up the Democratic nomination for president, this race for the White House has been radically transformed. A brand new ballgame, which is 100 days to go until Election Day. It was the rematch so many Americans did not want, until suddenly, after weeks of mounting pressure to end his re-election campaign, President Joe Biden passed the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris. And Harris got right to it, arguing her case against former President Donald Trump before a fired-up crowd in the battleground state of Wisconsin.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
And in an Oval Office address to the nation, President Biden laid out the stakes in this race as he sees them.
I ran for president 4 years ago because
Good morning and welcome to This Week. We are keeping a close eye on the Middle East this morning after Israel responded overnight to the deadliest attack on an Israeli-controlled area since October 7th. 12 children were killed by a rocket launch from Lebanon that hit a soccer field in the Golan Heights. Benjamin Netanyahu cut his trip to the U.S. short and is now back in Israel. But we begin with this wild U.S. presidential election. We are officially 100 days to Election Day, and you can be forgiven for needing to catch your breath after the transformational events of the past 31 days. It was just 1 month ago that the 2024 race was turned on its head by President Biden's catastrophic debate performance, leading to a drumbeat of calls for him to leave the race. Just 2 weeks ago, an attempted assassin tried to take the life of former President Trump, but he rose up with defiance, heading into the GOP convention with seemingly all the momentum behind him and the new Trump-Vance ticket. And it was just 1 week ago that President Biden did what he said only the Lord Almighty could make him do, announcing he was leaving the race and giving his full support to his vice president, Kamala Harris. A tidal wave of endorsements followed, putting Harris on track to be the second woman in history to be a major party nominee, just 8 years after Hillary Clinton was defeated by Donald Trump. This morning, our brand new ABC News Ipsos poll shows Harris getting a real bounce. Her favorability rating among all Americans up 8 points in just 1 week. The number's even better among independents, with her favorability rising from 28% to 44% since Biden left the race. And there appears to be new enthusiasm for Harris, with 48% enthusiastic about her as the Democratic nominee, compared to 39% enthusiastic about Trump as the GOP nominee. It has been a stunning turn of events in a presidential race that has defied expectations. To help us make sense of this wild week, let's turn to ABC senior national correspondent Terry Moran. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Martha. It's hard to believe that it's been just a week since President Biden ended his bid for re-election and transformed this campaign. And now with Vice President Kamala Harris having basically locked up the Democratic nomination for president, this race for the White House has been radically transformed. A brand new ballgame with just 100 days to go until Election Day. It was the rematch so many Americans did not want until suddenly, after weeks of mounting pressure to end his re-election campaign, President Joe Biden passed the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris. And Harris got right to it, arguing her case against former President Donald Trump before a fired-up crowd in the battleground state of Wisconsin.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
And in an Oval Office address to the nation, President Biden laid out the stakes in this race as he sees them.
I ran for president 4 years ago because I believed and still do that the soul of America was at stake. The very nature of who we are was at stake. And that's still the case.
By Monday night, Harris already had commitments from enough delegates to secure her party's nomination, and top Democrats quickly rallied around her.
Kamala Harris is a common sense leader who knows how to deliver real results.
She is capable, officially, personally, and politically, to lead us to victory in November.
Kamala. And on Friday, the most popular Democrats in the country, former President and First Lady Barack and Michelle Obama, endorsed Harris, capping off a historic week where her campaign raised $200 million. After spending years attacking Joe Biden, Donald Trump is now forced to refocus his attention on Harris.
We have a new victim now, Kamala. She was a bum 3 weeks ago. She was a bum. She is a radical left lunatic who will destroy our country.
A prime target for the GOP attacks on Harris, her role working with governments in Latin America to address the root causes of migration across our southern border.
The one job Kamala had was the border. That's the only job, and it was the biggest disaster in all of border history.
The candidates' vice presidential nominees could be pivotal in what's expected to be a very tight race. Republicans hope to win over suburban women, but some resurfaced comments from Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator JD Vance, may hurt that effort.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
Despite the backlash, Vance doubled down.
It's not a criticism of people who don't have children. This is about criticizing the Democratic Party for becoming anti-family and anti-child.
Who Harris picks as her running mate could help counter the Republican narrative that she's too liberal. Sources tell ABC News several moderate governors, Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro, North Carolina's Roy Cooper, and Kentucky's Andy Beshear, as well as Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, are among the leading contenders. Harris will make a decision quickly. The vice president is expected to announce her choice by August 7th. And Martha, this campaign really is in full swing next week. Both candidates will be heading to battleground states. Vice President Harris is scheduled to be campaigning in Georgia, and Donald Trump, he is going back to Pennsylvania, where just 2 weeks ago he survived an assassination attempt. Martha?
Our thanks to you, Terry. I'm joined now by Democratic Governor Wes Moore.
And I don't have a picture of Wes Moore. I do have my camera back working. We'll see if it freezes up again. I don't know why that happened. And I was like fixing it during the clip, and the clip stopped, and I can't make the clip start where it stopped, unfortunately, so I had to replay that ABC News summary from the beginning. I think you watched the first 2 or 3 minutes twice. I apologize for that, but I think it was the best of the news summaries. It was extensive. It talked about both the good things that Kamala Harris had happen for her this week and some of the bad quotes that have come out both from Donald Trump and from his vice presidential pick, JD Vance. I especially like that they showed that whole crazy cat lady clip, although when he was cleaning it up, they showed him, on the Megyn Kelly show, he tried to clean up his crazy cat lady comment. And he said, I don't have anything against cats or dogs either, but he didn't say he didn't have anything against ladies. It was like the ladies, I think, who he was really insulting. And so I wish that part had been in the ABC News summary. Other than that, the Terry Moran reporting I thought was great with the introduction from Martha Raddatz. As I mentioned, they only briefly talked about the attack on Israel over the weekend. That was much more extensively covered, as you might expect, from Fox News Sunday, where they always want to make people who support Israel be afraid. And so there were like a dozen children, Muslim Druze children in the Golan Heights killed in a soccer field. They got a lot more coverage in the American media than the children killed over in Gaza. Although I guess Druze is a little, I don't know exactly why that is. You can let me know what you think in the comment section as we watch Fox News Sunday. Shannon Bream introduced Trey Yingst for that story, and then a new reporter who I haven't seen before, Madison Alworth, doing the 100 days to the U.S. presidential election story that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch together over here.
Well, I'm Shannon Bream. What does the exit of President Biden from the race mean now for his lame duck status and for U.S. national security? Well, there's this. Today marks 100 days to Election Day, and the focus is turned to the Democratic Party and presumptive nominee, current Vice President Kamala Harris. The delegates and top Democrats across the country quickly rallied behind her after President Biden dropped out just 1 week ago. And new Fox News polling in the battleground states of Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin show Democratic voters overwhelmingly support Harris as the replacement nominee. Democratic delegates are poised to nominate Harris and her VP pick weeks before the DNC convention using virtual voting. They cite an August 7th Ohio ballot access deadline, but Republicans dispute that. They say there's been a legislative fix to extend the deadline to September 1st. It's all coming up in days. In a moment, we will speak with a potential VP pick, Pete Buttigieg, who's been campaigning with the vice president and is appearing in a personal capacity, not speaking on behalf of the Biden administration with us today. But first, we've got live coverage. Fox Business correspondent Madison Alworth in St. Cloud, Minnesota, with the latest on the Trump and Harris campaigns. But we begin with Trey Yingst in northern Israel at the soccer field the IDF says was hit by a Hezbollah rocket while children were playing, injuring dozens and killing at least 12. Trey.
Shannon, good morning. 12 children were killed yesterday here in Majd al-Shams when a Hezbollah rocket slammed into a soccer field. All of the victims were under 17 years old. You can see the aftermath and level of destruction caused by this rocket that was made in Iran, according to the Israeli military. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived in Tel Aviv this morning after a week of meetings in the United States. His visit included an address to Congress and key discussions with President Biden, Vice President Harris, and former President Trump. Netanyahu immediately entered a cabinet meeting upon his return as the region braces for what is promised to be a strong Israeli response. The tragic event in northern Israel comes as the war in Gaza approaches day 300. Ceasefire talks resumed today in Rome, with CIA Director William Burns meeting with Qatari and Egyptian negotiators, aiming to get closer to an agreement between Israel and Hamas and avoid an expanded conflict. The war in Gaza intensified in recent days, with new Israeli evacuations evacuation orders delivered to Palestinian civilians, and fresh airstrikes, one in central city of Deir al-Balah that killed 30 people, including women and children. Now, concern about the possibility of a larger regional war across the Middle East does come amid other key foreign policy concerns. This week, we do know there are new provocations by the Chinese against Taiwan. Shannon?
Trey Yingst, thank you very much, reporting live from Israel for us this morning. So back here at home to the heated race for the White House, Madison Alworth joins us reporting from the campaign trail in Minnesota. Hello, Madison.
Good morning, Shannon. With 100 days to go until Election Day and a likely new Democrat nominee, VP Harris is making her push to get more voters to her side, and former President Donald Trump is taking aim at his new opponent. After finishing up remarks in Nashville, Tennessee at the Bitcoin conference, Trump then made his way here to Minnesota in the deep blue state. The state is part of the expanded map that his camp hopes to make a competitive state in this cycle. A Democrat has won the presidential race in Minnesota every cycle since 1976. And the polling is not currently in Trump's favor. Latest Fox News polling shows Kamala Harris leads Trump here with 52% favorability. But that didn't stop Trump from hitting Harris on the issues of the border, economy, and crime.
A Kamala Harris presidency means 4 more years of extremism, weakness, failure, chaos, and probably World War III. I really believe it.
VP pick JD Vance also took aim at VP Harris, questioning her path to the top of the ticket.
Kamala Harris, the Democratic elites are trying to install her as their new nominee without her receiving a single vote for president. The media, our friends back there, they call it a coronation. I think there's another word. I call it a coup.
Harris is undeterred by the questions of her ascension. She's coming hot off a big first week as the likely head of the ticket, banking $200 million in donations.
We're the underdogs in this race. But this is a people-powered campaign. And we have momentum.
But it is unclear who will join her on that ticket. The governor of Minnesota has been floated as a pick. So has the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who stumped for her on Saturday and will be on the trail again Monday. The Harris campaign calling this a weekend of action, sprinting to Election Day.
My glass is half full, and I'll tell you why. Because of Kamala Harris and all of you. You see, I'm optimistic because I've seen the great spirit of Pennsylvanians. Yes. And you are the epicenter of this battle.
With 100 days to go, campaigning is full steam ahead. Shannon?
All right, Madison Alworth on the campaign trail in Minnesota. Madison, thank you. Now joining us, also fresh off the campaign trail, Pete Buttigieg.
And I will have a couple really good Pete Buttigieg clips where he dismantles the Fox News talking points in really a way that's kind of beautiful to watch, especially with Shannon Bream trying to push back not very well. If you look down in the video description, by the way, I have short summaries of all 14 of the clips so you can see what's coming up. And we're halfway into our news summary since there are only 4 this week, only no Meet the Press, as I said earlier. And the next news summary, CBS News Face the Nation. Oh, by the way, that Fox News Sunday news summary, like I talked about how it was biased in favor of Israel in the Trey Yingst reporting, and then the Madison Alworth part, none of the problematic things that Trump and JD Vance said kind of showed up in that report. I wonder what all those things you saw in the ABC report, I guess Fox News just missed them. For some reason they just didn't get reported. But anyway, the next report from CBS News Face the Nation, Debora Patta is their reporter on the attack on the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, on the Druze village in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. I don't think they said Israeli-occupied in the Trey Yingst report, but maybe I missed it. But I don't think they did. And anyway, this is a much more balanced portrayal of what's going on in Israel than you saw from Fox News, as I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. We'll get to politics and the presidential race in a moment, but we want to begin this morning with the Middle East and fears that hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah could spark a broader regional conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just returned to Tel Aviv from his trip to the U.S., and Debora Patta has the latest.
It was mostly children and teens killed in the Hezbollah rocket attack. This morning, families and friends gathered to bury their dead. Rabia knew every single victim. How much will you miss them?
I wish we could, I wish we could go back on time and this wouldn't happen.
The strike in this remote Druze village in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights is the deadliest since October 7. The kids were playing soccer just behind me when the sirens rang out. Moments later, the rocket hit, leaving no time for them to run to this shelter. Children were playing soccer here when the sirens rang out. Seconds later, the rocket slammed into the pitch, leaving no time to run to safety. Israel and the Iranian-backed Hezbollah have been trading almost daily fire along the Lebanese border for more than 9 months now, but this could escalate tensions. A U.S. official told CBS News there's no doubt it was a Hezbollah rocket, despite denials from the armed group. While the U.S. does not believe it intended to hit the soccer field, this is exactly the kind of nightmare scenario it's been warning about that could push the region into all-out war. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu cut short his U.S. trip to fly home, and overnight his warplanes retaliated by hitting Hezbollah targets deep inside Lebanon. The Israel Defense Force is already overstretched in Gaza. Over the weekend, the Israeli military issued new evacuation orders in an area in Khan Yunis designated a humanitarian safe zone, once again upending the lives of displaced Palestinians. But there was no warning before the IDF hit this school, sheltering civilians in central Gaza yesterday. In the dust and rubble, people scramble for safety. This woman calls frantically for her loved ones lost in the panic. We were just sitting, playing happily with this traumatized young boy. The IDF says it was a Hamas command center, but there were mostly women and children among the more than 30 killed.
Debora Patta reporting in Israel. We turn now to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
And I don't have a Chuck Schumer clip because I believe I took the Lindsey Graham clip from CBS News Face the Nation, a couple Pete Buttigieg clips from Fox News Sunday, and I took 3 different clips from State of the Union. There were some great clips on State of the Union this week. And then, what was the other one? Oh, Tom Cotton from, Lindsey Graham was on, I gotta go look at my clip list. Well, you can look at my clip list. Why am I reading you my clip list? You can go see, oh, that's right. Pete Buttigieg, and then Senator Elizabeth Warren on CNN, Tom Cotton on CNN, Lindsey Graham on CBS. But what I wanted to show you next was the last of the news summaries, the CNN State of the Union news summary. Jake Tapper, I believe, is in this 90-second news summary is more informative on what's going on than the much longer news summary you saw from Fox News Sunday, where they left out all the problems that the Trump campaign's having, which do show up from Jake Tapper over in this final news summary. I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is in a sprint. 100 days out. We're in only 1 week into the brand new presidential race, leaving Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump just 100 days to readjust to their new reality before Election Day. Vice President Harris has made strides since President Biden dropped out of the race 1 week ago today. Several polls show her tightening up the race with Trump, especially in those battleground states. And this morning, The Harris campaign announced she has already raised $200 million in the last week. But Republicans are beginning to pick apart her record, largely from her time in California and also her time tacking to the left in the 2020 primary campaign. The next few months will be a trial by fire. Donald Trump, for his part, is trying to find his footing after the big switch last night. He was still testing lines of attack against Harris in Minnesota in a joint appearance with his vice presidential pick, JD Vance, who's dealing with controversies of his own, as Trump falsely claimed he won Minnesota in 2020, which he did not, and tried to get a handle on his new opponent.
She's a radical left lunatic. She has no clue. She's evil. I want to be nice. They all say, I think he's changed. I think he's changed since 2 weeks ago. Something affected him. No, I haven't changed. Maybe I've gotten worse.
Joining us now to discuss Massachusetts Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren.
And I will have Senator Elizabeth Warren on for the final clip I'm going to show you, which actually talks about one of the reasons I've never been a big fan of Kamala Harris, because she used to be a prosecutor, attorney general. She's, basically a cop or a pro-cop, pro-law enforcement, pro-law enforcement here in California for people like me who are activists for ending mass incarceration and that, however, just because, I'm still going to vote for Kamala Harris, that problem that I have with her, it might actually help her with, the more centrist Americans who, are less progressive on criminal legal issues and have been told that there's America's crime crisis, as they say on Fox News all the time, although Pete Buttigieg will set that straight over in clip 13. Elizabeth Warren will be clip 14. But before I get to that, I want to show 3 Republicans responding to some of the problematic things that Trump and his running mate JD Vance have been saying. The first one is that crazy cat lady statement, and my one criticism, first, it's amazing that over on CBS News Face the Nation, they asked the crazy cat lady question to basically the crazy cat lady the crazy childless cat lady of the Republican Party, Senator Lindsey Graham. I don't know. That's my judgment. You can tell me what you think. But and he even brings up the fact that he's childless here. And that's basically what JD Vance was saying, is like people who don't have children don't have a stake in the future. And so they shouldn't be, having the same voice in our governmental system. That's pretty radical, exclusionary stuff. And my one criticism is that they didn't show the actual clip. They just sort of talked about it. They showed something that the Wall Street Journal said about JD Vance being smart alecky and, saying things that appeal to the right wing, but not to the more general public. So I will replay for you the crazy cat lady clip that you saw on the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary. Here's that 12 seconds again.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
And yeah, so here is Lindsey Graham, although they don't play the clip for him. Here is the official childless crazy cat lady of the Republican Party responding to what JD Vance said on CBS News' Face the Nation over here.
Let's turn to the presidential race, Senator Graham. You just heard from Senator Schumer. He called your colleague in the Senate who's on the ticket, Senator JD Vance. He called him weird. He called him extreme. And he said he wonders if your close friend, former President Trump, sitting there this morning wondering, why did I pick this guy? But it's not just Democrats, Senator. Let me show you something from the Wall Street Journal editorial page. We know you read that. They said Senator Vance's recent comments smack of smart aleck cracks that get laughs in certain right-wing male precincts, but it doesn't play well with millions of female voters, many of them Republicans. We're talking about Senator Vance talking about childless Americans in political leadership in recent days, among other controversial comments. You're close to former President Trump. Does he in any way regret having Vance on the ticket?
No, not at all, because J.D. Vance has one of the most compelling stories in American politics. When you look at his background, what he overcome, early in life to be who he is. He went to Iraq. He didn't have to. He went to Yale Law School. He became a Marine. That's no small deal. The American First agenda will be in good hands with JD. No matter who the Democrats pick, Vice President Harris picks to be her running mate, they will buy into her agenda. And her agenda is the Green New Deal and Medicare for all. She is the most liberal senator in the United States Senate, and there's been enough drugs on her watch as borders are, fentanyl, to come in through the border to kill everybody in the world. So the America described by Senator Schumer, where Biden did a great job, is not connecting with the American people. We're on the wrong track. The American people know it, and JD Vance will help President Trump get us on the right track. And if you expect Kamala Harris, the border czar, that's been a miserable failure on that issue, to get us back on the right track, it would be a colossal mistake. So we're in good shape on the Republican side. Policy matters as an election. If this is a policy election, we win.
Senator, understand your focus on Vice President Harris, the presumptive Democratic nominee, but there are many Americans who do not have children. You're also not just a senator, you're a political strategist. You work informally with former President Trump and so many Republicans. You have a political mind. Is it a mistake for Senator Vance to keep talking about Americans who don't have children when it comes to a national campaign?
Right. Yeah, I don't have children, but I'm going to vote for JD and Trump because I think we'll be safer and more prosperous and more secure. I want to end the Biden-Harris debacle. No, you should never say anything to hurt anybody's feelings, but when you look at all these interviews by JD, he was talking about how the Democratic Party has abandoned the traditional family. This election is going to be decided by the American people on who can correct the problems in their lives. And here's what most Americans are experiencing. Having to choose between buying food and gas, a border that is beyond broken, the largest cause of death of young people in America is fentanyl poisoning coming through the broken border, and a world on fire. So this idea of trying to marginalize JD and make him some kind of bad person is not going to work, because he's not a bad person. He's a good person.
Senator,
he has served his country honorably, and it's going to help President Trump win.
Senator, no one's questioning his character here. We're just wondering.
They're not.
Well, not here at Face the Nation. Is it smart politics for him to? Is he have the right message to win this election or not? Or would you advise him to adjust his message?
His message is, I'm going to help President Trump change America. We're going to secure our border. We're going to drill for oil and gas that we own, and we're going to set the world right pretty quickly. We're going to address inflation in a real way. That's the message of the Trump-Vance campaign, is to fundamentally change the problems that you're living with. If you expect Vice President Harris to change the course we're on as a nation, you're going to be sadly disappointed. She is the most liberal senator in the United States Senate. There is no liberal horse that she has chosen not to ride. She sponsored the Green New Deal and Medicare for all. At the end of the day, recasting her as something she's not. She's a nice person, but she's incredibly liberal. I mean, major league liberal. At a time when we need to reset America, she's going to double down on wrong policy choices. And JD Vance and Donald Trump are going to change the course of this country and the world.
Senator, President.
So, yeah, calling her liberal, huh? I mean, you're watching LiberalViewer, so maybe you don't think the word liberal is so bad. And I'm actually going to have a clip after I do two more Republicans. I'm going to show you the three Democrats, the first of whom is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, defending his liberal policies and what a monster he is for being a liberal. And he's one of the top three contenders to be Kamala Harris's vice president, supposedly. Tim Walz of Minnesota, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, both governors, and then the Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona. Those are supposedly the top three. But before I get to Tim Walz, one of those top three contenders to be Kamala Harris's vice president, I want to show you two more Republicans responding to bad quotes that came out this week for Republicans. One of the reasons they had their bad week. This is Tom Cotton responding to something Trump's new vice presidential candidate, JD Vance, said on a podcast about how George Soros was going to be sending 747s to Ohio to take mostly black women to California for abortions, and we had to do something on a federal level to stop that. So basically, women shouldn't be able to, if women can't get abortions in their own states, they shouldn't be able to travel to other states to get abortions. And here's Tom Cotton defending that over with Jake Tapper on CNN State of the Union yesterday over here.
I want to ask you about something that Senator Vance said that the Harris campaign is pouncing on. This is from a podcast in 2022 when he was running for Senate talking about abortion. Take a listen.
Let's say Roe versus Wade is overruled. Ohio bans abortion. And then, every day, George Soros sends a 747 to Columbus to load up disproportionately black women to get them to go have abortions in California. Do you need some federal response to prevent it from happening? Because it's really creepy. And, I'm pretty sympathetic to that, actually.
You, like Senator Vance, are also a staunch opponent of abortion. Do you think there should be a federal response to block women from traveling to other states to get abortions if they want to get them the way that Senator Vance was suggesting?
Well, no, Jake. And what JD is saying, or what JD has said since he became the vice presidential nominee, it's the same thing that President Trump has said. He is pro-life. President Trump appointed 3 constitutional jurists who reversed the terrible decision in Roe v. Wade, which even liberal legal scholars say was wrongly decided. That question is now, as it should be in our democracy, in the hands of the people and their elected representatives. Now, just as a practical matter, there's probably not going to be 60 votes anytime soon in the United States Senate for any abortion regulations, either the Democrats making it more liberal or Republicans making it slightly more conservative. President Trump has acknowledged that reality. Now, he's also said he's not going to allow things like the VA clinics to be converted into abortion clinics, taking away care from our great veterans, but he's also acknowledged that states are going to be, by and large, making these decisions. And obviously a state like, say, Alabama or Mississippi is going to have a different viewpoint than, say, a state like California and Oregon. And that's the way things operate in our democracy.
All right, Senator Tom Cotton, Republican from Arkansas, thanks so much for joining us today. Good to see you.
So, yeah, that's the Tom Cotton defense of another JD Vance problematic statement. And then there was this problematic statement that Trump made that Christians vote for me. He was talking to Turning Point Action. Christians vote for me and you won't ever have to vote again, which some people construed to mean that once Trump is elected, there won't be any more voting. Although, I don't know, here you'll see Governor Chris Sununu defending the statement. And I actually kind of think his explanation may be what Trump meant, but I don't know. You never know with Trump. And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that second clip from CNN State of the Union together. Wait, no, this isn't CNN State of the Union. This is ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos talking to Martha Raddatz over in this clip.
Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
Former President Trump facing some backlash for those comments Friday night, saying his supporters won't have to vote again in 4 years. I'm joined now by the Republican governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu. Governor, what the heck did he mean there?
Well, I think that was a classic Trumpism, if you will. I think he's just trying to make the point that this stuff can be fixed. Obviously, we want everybody to vote in all elections, but I think he was just trying to make a hyperbolic point that it can be fixed as long as he gets back into office and all that. But classic Trump right there.
Okay, and just days. Let's turn to President Biden.
Yeah, classic Trump right there. I guess at least that part I agree with. And like I said, maybe that is what Trump. Who knows? Half the time I have no idea. Or Trump could mean so many different things because he speaks in such a vague way and he goes all around the issue and takes almost every side of the issue sometimes, it seems. And he's not a clear political thinker, let's say. But I have now shown you all of the Republicans trying to defend some of the bad quotes that came out for Republicans this week that gave them bad coverage. Now I'm going to show you 3 Democrats talking about why Democrats had a good week. And the first one here is that clip I promised a few minutes ago of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. He's being asked by Jake Tapper on CNN State of the Union about Kamala Harris being attacked as being too liberal, and he has like the most liberal record of any of the governors being considered as vice president. Is he too liberal to be with someone who's being accused of being liberal? You know, as LiberalViewer, I don't really have a lot of problems with real liberal policies, and I think actually Governor Tim Walz does a really good job of defending those policies. And this is just a little over a minute in this clip.
Trump is trying to paint Vice President Harris as an ultra-liberal. Of all her potential running mates, you might have the most progressive record as governor. I know you were more of a moderate when you were in the House, but you've legalized recreational marijuana, you passed universal background checks on guns, you expanded LGBTQ protections, you implemented tuition-free college for low-income Minnesotans. There's free breakfast and lunch for school kids. Do you think your record is an asset to the ticket, or would it risk fueling Trump's attacks as you being a big government liberal?
What a monster. Kids are eating and having full bellies so they can go learn, and women are making their own health care decisions. And we're a top 5 business state, and we also rank in the top 3 of happiness. Look, they're going to label whatever they're going to label. He's going to roll it out, mispronounce names, you know, to try and make the case. The fact of the matter is, where you see the policies that Vice President Harris was a part of making, Democratic governors across the country executed those policies, and quality of life is higher, the economies are better, all of those things. Educational attainment is better. So, yeah, my kids are going to eat here, and you're going to have a chance to go to college, and you're going to have an opportunity to live where we're working on reducing carbon emissions. Oh, and by the way, you're going to have personal incomes that are higher, and you're going to have health insurance. So if that's where they want to label me, I'm more than happy to take the label.
So yeah, that was a good succinct defense of those policies there. And a lot of the times with the attacks I see on Kamala Harris are like not the attacks that bother me about her being too pro law enforcement, but like she's for Medicare for all, she's wants to stop climate change, they're actually attacking her with these things on Fox News. I watch a lot of Fox News, and it's weird the things that people on the right think are bad. I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was a good defense from Tim Walz on liberal programs. But if you really want to see a master of the dismantling of the right-wing talking points, I'm going to show you first, the entire interview with Pete Buttigieg went so well for Pete. This is, I guess, what I call the reverse cross-examination, where the guest cross-examines the host more than the host cross-examines the guest. And this starts with the question about whether Kamala Harris should have been, more vetted. She didn't win any delegates. There's a part I cut out where, it's more like a coronation, and I think they do say coronation in the clip I kept, but just that it's, it's undemocratic, and I covered all of that last week. But Pete Buttigieg not only pushes back on that, but he pushes back on a lot of the lies that Trump has told, and the things he promised that he didn't do, and the bad things he promised that he did do, especially on getting rid of the right to choose. This is like masterful clip that I will talk about with you a little more, definitely the clip of the week. That I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
You actually have gotten more delegates, though, than she has. I mean, when you ran back in 2020, you accrued them. She didn't get any delegates. She dropped out of that race. Former staffer of hers says she worries about this coronation. She wrote about it in The Atlantic, saying she wasn't tested and tried. Are you worried about that? Because Bret Stephens also says this. He says she's unpopular. She's been a bad campaigner. She's been a bad manager. She's a blue state Dem who's got to win purple states. She's anchored to the president's record. He worries that, maybe Democrats should be more worried that there hasn't been a thorough vetting. So when she gets into this head-to-head with President Trump, there will be wishes that she had been vetted.
The idea that somebody hasn't been tested or vetted when they have been Vice President of the United States for nearly 4 years just doesn't make any sense. She is in obviously one of the most visible leadership roles in the country, and she's demonstrated both her effectiveness in that job and a vision for the country that Americans agree with. And that's the real reason I think she's going to win, is that most Americans already agree with her on the issues that they care about the most, that affect them the most, whether we're talking about choice and her stance on defending a woman's right to choose versus Donald Trump, who eliminated a right to choose in this country.
Well, he sent it back to the states, to be fair.
Let's be very clear. He is proud of the fact that he demolished the national right to choose in this country, period.
But there are states that are figuring this out. I mean, there are some that are, it's nearly impossible, a 6-week ban or less. But there are others, there are states in this country that allow no restrictions up until the due date of a child.
There was a national right to choose in this country, law of the land, for 50 years, which the vast majority of Americans believe was the right thing to do. But Donald Trump made a promise when he was a candidate, one of the few promises he actually kept, by the way. He didn't keep his promise of 6% economic growth. He didn't keep his promise to drain the swamp.
He did have a pandemic to deal with.
But even before the pandemic, America went into a manufacturing recession, which really hurt places like where I come from in the industrial Midwest. But anyway, my point is, he broke his promise for that kind of economic growth. He broke his promise to pass an infrastructure bill, right? He said he would do that. He failed to do it. The Biden-Harris administration got it done. He even broke his promise to that January 6th mob when he said, I will be at your side when you march down to the Capitol. But he actually did keep 2 promises. He kept his promise to destroy the right to choose in this country, and he kept his promise on tax cuts for the rich. And if you want to know what a second Trump term would be like, I would start by looking at those rare promises that he actually managed to keep.
He did say that he wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade, but again, send it to the states where they are hashing this out
empower the states to
have very
eliminate
different
women's access to abortion, and also, as you know, the Republican Party continues to be interested in a national abortion
which he's
ban.
disavowed completely.
Yeah, he's disavowed a lot of things. I don't believe him.
Because
he lies all the time.
You think that his pledge that he would not pass a national ban is one that
it's one that's going to go down with most of the promises that he's made and broken.
Let's talk about this, though, since we're still talking about the transition very quickly to a brand new nominee, apparently, and ticket. There are questions about why the vice president maybe didn't speak up earlier about what she may have seen as the president's decline. The Hill puts it this way in an opinion piece over there. It says, if all these other figures could see the country was being led by a very unsteady president mentally and physically, wouldn't Harris be able to see that, too? In what possible scenario is President Biden's vice president not directly involved in the cover-up? Or perhaps even more embarrassing, was she so detached from the day-to-day activities at the highest level of the administration that she simply hadn't noticed?
The simple fact is that Joe Biden is good at being president. You can tell by the results that he's getting, results that Donald Trump tried and failed to get, right? Trump tried and failed to get the kind of job growth that Joe Biden has presided over. Trump tried and failed to get an infrastructure bill done. So at the end of the day, you judge a president's effectiveness based on the job that they're doing. And that's what we've seen. Now, the president made an extraordinary, historic, selfless choice to take himself out of the nominating process and concentrate 100% on the presidency. I think that was the right choice. I know he's going to want to sprint through the tape in terms of the work of the presidency. Meanwhile, we have a new nominee.
And was she aware of how he was doing?
We're all aware of how he's doing. Our country has watched our president lead. And yes, we've also seen the fact that he's 10 years older than he was 10 years ago. But unlike Republicans, right, who in Trump's personality cult will take a look at Donald Trump and say he's perfectly fine, even though he seemed unable to tell the difference between Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi, even though he's rambling about electrocuting sharks and Hannibal Lecter, even though he is clearly older and stranger than he was when America first got to know him. They say he's strong as an ox, leaps tall buildings in a single bound.
Well,
we don't have that kind of warped reality on our side.
Well,
on the contrary, the president confronted that reality in what must have been one of the most difficult decisions for an American president to make ever. And he did something that I don't think Donald Trump could even conceive of doing, which is putting his own interests aside for the country.
Well, voters have said that they are much less worried about the mental acuity and the physical strength of President Trump. They see
compared
them,
to Biden or compared to Harris? I'm pretty sure voters are worried about the age and acuity of President Trump compared to Kamala Harris, who represents being a generation younger. And how could anybody not watch the stuff he's saying, the rambling on the trail, and not be just a little bit concerned?
Well, that is certainly one of her talking points, and one of yours now as her campaign too.
And something most Americans believe.
Well, but most Americans didn't have a worry about him the way that they did about President Biden.
Americans are worried about him in lots of ways, and he's not running against President Biden anymore. You can tell polling, he desperately wants to be, but he's not.
We do have new polls. Okay, so let's talk.
Sounds like Shannon Bream desperately wants to be running against Joe Biden and not Kamala Harris there. But Pete did a bunch of pushback there all the way through the Kamala Harris was in on the cover-up of Biden's decline, which I don't even know if there was a cover-up, but the idea that it's her fault seems kind of strange. And before that, all that pushback on, Trump. Well, Trump says he's not going to have a federal ban on abortion. Yeah, I don't believe him because he lies all the time. That some people have to say about Trump a lot more. I don't believe him because he lies all the time. Why don't we hear people say that about Trump more? Because it's so obviously true. But anyway, that was a great dismantling of right-wing talking points by Pete Buttigieg. But I couldn't finish up without showing one more 90-second clip of him. At the very end of the interview, he snuck in a talking point or a fact that you never hear. Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe you hear it occasionally from the people on the left, like Jessica Tarloff, who's finally back from maternity leave, or Juan Williams, maybe, but maybe you hear about America's crime crisis and the threat from crime and migrant crime all the time on Fox, every day, every hour. Most of the people, especially from the supposedly straight news anchors, but then when you get to the opinion shows, it's even worse. And this is a fact that Pete Buttigieg makes sure that he rubs in at the end of his interview with Shannon Bream over here.
I saw something else really important happening at the Republican National Convention on the border and the talk about immigration, which we all recognize is a problem, which is they tried to paint this narrative that if you live somewhere far from the border and immigration hasn't affected you personally, you need to think that immigration is a driver of crime. That was the real message. Immigration leads to crime.
Well, there are blue state governors and mayors who say every state is a border state now. That's Democrats.
Yeah, and now they're saying, but what the false message of the RNC was that this is leading to an increase in crime.
Well,
and I think it's really important that we talk about crime.
Have been very high profile about people. If they had not been in this country
cases,
illegally,
this is my
people
point,
would still
right?
be alive.
Trying to make people think that crime is up when crime is down under Joe Biden and crime was up under Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how often that gets reported on this network. So if you're watching this at home, do yourself a favor and look up the data.
Well, we invite that.
Great. So if you look this up at home, you will know that crime went down under Biden and crime went up under Trump. And I think the violent crime, for sure. So I think the really important thing to ask is, why would America want to go back to the higher crime that we experienced under Donald Trump?
Okay, but they also may want to ask why they'd want to go to millions fewer people coming illegal across the border, and every single person who's here and was involved with a crime, that's a life that didn't have to be lost. And I think that's the argument being made. We always appreciate you coming, and we hope you'll come back again many times.
Thanks for having me.
And maybe as a vice presidential contender. We'll see. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, that was a really good pushback from Pete Buttigieg on something you don't hear on Fox News, and Shannon Bream tried her best to push back on. But there are people who aren't supposed to be here who commit crimes, and so that every time that happens, that's a life that didn't have to be lost. Well, you could say that about assault weapons that haven't been banned because of Republicans in the NRA. What about all of those that, it's kind of a faulty causality there, and especially given that the facts are that immigrants, even undocumented immigrants, commit crimes at a much lower rate than the native-born population. That's the one thing that Pete Buttigieg didn't say, which only makes sense because if you have an undocumented status, you probably are more likely to want to avoid contact with law enforcement, right? Doesn't take a genius to figure that out. But anyway, I do have one more newsmaker clip before I get to my bonus Cheech and Chong the Kittens clip. I don't know if I have to like go back and like edit. I have this recorded and I could edit out some of those glitches and upload it so that people don't have to wait while I'm fixing the camera and rewatch the ABC news summary the first 2 or 3 minutes again. I don't know. Should I go and like do the editing and re-upload it or upload the recorded version or whatever? I think I can just leave the live stream with all your live comments along the way. So, yeah, maybe I'll just leave it the way it is. Just maybe I'm just lazy, but whatever. The last clip I want to show you is the one that I previewed earlier where Jake Tapper asks Senator Elizabeth Warren on CNN State of the Union whether Kamala Harris now leaning into her role as a prosecutor, the prosecutor versus the felon thing that they've been pushing, that is that going to alienate people like me who have worked for reform of the criminal legal system for a long time. And I live here in California, not a big fan of Kamala Harris. I worked as a volunteer with the ACLU, although actually when I first started on the board of the ACLU of Northern California, the executive director of the ACLU of Northern California at that time was Maya Harris, the sister of Kamala Harris, who, I don't know her that well, but I did spend some time in meetings with her way back in 2007, I think that was, when Maya Harris was the executive director of the ACLU of Northern California. So how like one sister, and I've heard Kamala Harris even talk about that, like how one sister worked for the ACLU and then she became like a prosecutor, that her family was much more anti-law enforcement or more progressive or more pro-civil rights and civil liberties than, I don't know. And I don't think she made a lot of good choices when she was a prosecutor. But I'll still vote for her. I'll still support her. She certainly wasn't my first choice. Biden wasn't my first choice. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020 in the primaries here in California. And I would have voted for Elizabeth Warren before I voted for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. But here is Elizabeth Warren defending Kamala Harris and her record that I don't like over here.
When you endorsed Vice President Harris, you said, quote, "Who better than a former prosecutor to take on Donald Trump?" Now, it wasn't that long ago, the 2020 primaries, you were running, she was running. Progressives were criticizing her as Kamala the cop. It's a label she actively tried to distance herself from, including by expressing support for some of the arguments behind the police movement, not in favor of defunding the police, but talking about the need to re-examine funding for cops. Given the defund the police movement, given the Black Lives Matter movement, given where your party's base seems to be on these policing issues, is it a risk for her to lean into her prosecutorial background?
Not at all. Kamala is someone who started out as a prosecutor. She put away gang members. She worked very hard for the protection of the people of California. But look where she and the Biden-Harris administration have gone. What's happened in the time during that they have been in office is that we have surged resources to our first responders, surged resources to make sure that both the police have the resources they need, but also when a 911 call comes in, that sometimes it should be answered by a police officer, but sometimes by a social worker or public health official who needs to deal with a different kind of crisis. It's been the Democrats who have put money into that. And by the way, I should say, every single Republican voted against that kind of funding to help make us all safer and give better responses for those who are out on the front lines.
And yeah, I think that actually Kamala Harris has, when she was in the primary, she tried to disavow her background as a cop or with Kamala the cop or whatever, and she did espouse much more progressive views about, this was the summer of George Floyd and all that in 2020. So as Jake Tapper said in the introduction, she did try to go that way, and now she seems to be tacking more towards the tough on crime prosecutor, which will help her more in a general election anyway, as I was saying earlier in the program. But I mean, Kamala Harris is not my favorite politician, but she's a billion times better than Donald Trump, and she apparently is better than Joe Biden in terms of taking on Donald Trump and winning, at least with the current burst of energy. There's still 100 days, less than 100 days left. She's had a good week. The Republicans have had a bad week. That's what I'm reporting with the clips I picked out from the Sunday morning news analysis shows with my media criticism and political commentary added. And I believe I've proven my point. Kamala Harris, good week. Republicans, bad week. They're only, 13 weeks and the 100 days left? Something like that. So every week that's a good week for Democrats is another notch up away from another Trump presidency. And that's what I hope we're all hoping for. I know not all of my viewers are hoping for that, but all of us who believe in the ongoing system in the U.S. Constitution, we want to keep, we don't want someone who said he'd terminate the Constitution, who actually tried to stop the constitutional peaceful transfer of power on January 6, 2021. That's why there are some Republicans who are actually against Trump. And I believe that this is a big choice, and people who are choosing Trump are making the wrong choice. That's the only point I'm trying to make there. And now, before I finish the program, which hopefully won't have as many glitches next week, I did promise a bonus Cheech and Chong the Kittens clip. This is out in that hallway again. We always try to add new toys to keep them interested. This is sort of a bouncing red toy with feathers that ends up with Chong making a ruckus over in this clip. And then right there at the end, you heard my wife, who was working at home, wondering what was that. I think it was not just the toy, but Chong hitting that metal grate made that noise. Oh, thank you, Lulu Girl, for the Super Chat contribution. I really appreciate that. I hope you're doing well. It's good to see you for a live show. I don't think I'll have another reason to upload a video this week, but you never know. And I will be back next Monday and every Monday through January 2025, giving you my clips, my commentary, my criticism. So until next week, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.